Welcome to the Empowerment Hour podcast, your digital classroom where individuals across all ages, backgrounds, and career levels tune in to get their weekly dose of inspiration and motivation. It's where passion and purpose intersect. I am your host, Nancy Ruffin, the self-proclaimed Latina Oprah and your very own personal success coach. My goal is to help you discover your purpose and take inspired action so that you create a life where you feel fulfilled and empowered. So if you're ready to start living on purpose, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Empowerment Hour podcast. I am your host, Nancy Ruffin. And as always, it's amazing to be back here another week with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your consistent loyalty and support. I have the best tribe out there. You guys are so consistent in your support of me and how you communicate with me, in your engagement. It's one of my favorite things that has kind of come out of this entire podcast experience, that this platform has really allowed me to connect with you all on a much closer level. And what I mean by that is that every single week you guys are reaching out to me, letting me know how these podcasts, either help you, force you to kind of reevaluate some of your own things happening in your life. They challenge you, they inspire you. A handful of you have actually gone on to start creating content of your own as a result of tuning in every week to me. And so kudos to all of you and congratulations. And I guess thank you, because for me, it's probably the biggest honor to know that I have helped to light the fire under someone's dreams or passions. So I guess as you guys continue to grow in your own platforms, be mindful of the individuals who are listening to you, who are reading your work, who are following you, who are connecting, and make sure that you do your best to engage with these people who invest their time in supporting you. One of the things that I've started to do on my own social media is I've started to kind of clean up my followers list. One, because of these new algorithms, I feel like I see less and less posts of the people who I actually want to see. And instead, I'm seeing, posts on my news feed of individuals who don't necessarily engage that much with me. And so what I've started doing is, if I see individuals who don't engage with me consistently, either by liking, commenting, sending me DMs, responding to my Insta stories, or people who don't respond or reply to comments that I leave on their posts, then for me, that indicates that they don't really want to have that connection via social media. And so what I started doing is kind of unfollowing these accounts, because for me, I don't want my newsfeed to be clogged with just random posts by people who have no interest in really connecting with me or really engaging with me. And I've unfollowed people who I know in real life, who I've had, some kind of relationship or friendship with, and they don't get it, and, for me, social media is about connecting. And so if we're not doing that, then for me, there really isn't any point in us being connected. I want to feel inspired by the things that I see on my news feed. I want to feel motivated, or I want things to I want to see things that make me happy, or, just things that help to kind of elevate our moods, because there's just so much stuff happening in the world today that I just don't want to see random things that are not geared towards, being empowering or inspiring, or just sharing negative things that we tend, to do a lot online. And so I started unfollowing accounts, and if I've unfollowed you, understand that it is not anything personal. Like, it's not social media. It's not about the number of followers that I have. It's not about the number of likes that I have. It really, for me, is about the connections that I am making. And I will tell you that I have made, within the past couple of years, since I've been really active, specifically on Instagram, I've connected with some really amazing people that have turned into real life friendships. And so for me, that is really what social media is about. It's about connecting with people who you otherwise wouldn't be able to connect with, either because of distance or because of different interests. And so you necessarily would never be at the same place at the same time. But, social media, it's like everything is a leveled playing field. And so you never know who you're going to connect with. And thankfully for me, I've really been connected to some amazing people. So back to you guys who are starting your own platforms, never think that you're too good to respond to someone's comments. Don't allow yourself to get hung up on the number of followers you have, the number of likes your posts get. It's all about how you're interacting with your audience and with the people who are investing their time into connecting with you on social media. Reciprocity is key when, connecting either on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever medium is your choice, preferred choice of platform. Make sure that you're making real, genuine, authentic connections. I guess that's all I really have to say about that. But, kudos to all of you who have kind of broken out of your own comfort zone and have taken a chance on yourselves. One of the things that I've been talking a lot about lately is the power that we each have in sharing our story, right? Or sharing our testimony, whatever that may be. And a lot of times, we feel like we're the only ones that are going through something or have gone through something. But in reality, a lot of us go through a lot of the same things. We each suffer loss. We each suffer heartbreak, disappointments. There are things that, for whatever reason, dreams that we want, and for whatever reason, God doesn't believe that those dreams are the right dreams for us, and so we don't get them. And when we go through these things where we want something so bad that's not really part of our destiny, it's disappointing. And sometimes it's heartbreaking, and sometimes it makes you feel like you're the only one going through that. But one thing that I've learned in my life and in my own journey is that we're never alone on the paths that we walk. Although it may seem that way, and although the healing is our responsibility, there are so many others that have walked that very same path. And so for me, when I talk about the power in sharing your story, it helps to bring people together, and it helps others who are walking that path currently feel less alone. And not only that, what it does is that when you share your story and you share how you overcame that, and you share how you're alive and you're thriving, and the thing that you thought at one time would break you didn't, it gives others who are walking that same journey hope, for them, because they see, wow, if he or she made it through, then I can make it through too. So never be ashamed to tell people what you have survived. Never be ashamed to tell people, how God lifted you from, a place of being down and out and feeling as if the world was on your shoulders, to elevating you and to really giving you all of the things that you didn't even know you wanted. We have to, as we get through our own mess, as we heal ourselves and our hearts and all of the things that we allow to break us, we have to take all of that and share it so that we can inspire someone else. Because you never know who is going through a hard time. You never know who needs to hear your story. And I hope that you guys all have had an amazing week. I can't believe that we're already nearing the end of July. The summer is more than half over, right? We'll be in August in a couple of weeks, and then we're back in September. The kids are back to school, and it's like, before you know it, Christmas will be here. And for me, this week was a little bit disappointing. I've been a little sad because my parents moved back to Florida this past Monday. They've had their house in Florida for quite some time. I want to say over 10 years, 12 years approximately. They moved to Florida, I think, when my oldest niece was about 2 or 3 years old. They bought a house. They sold our house that we had in Queens, and my father retired, and they kind of moved out to Florida. But then my sister started having babies. Well, she had my oldest niece, but then she had my youngest niece, and she was a single mom. And during that time, I don't know, she had encountered some babysitting issues. So my parents had come back to kind of help her temporarily through that. But that temporarily resulted in them kind of staying here like indefinitely. So once my sister's kids got, old enough that, they were in school and they didn't really need to have quote unquote babysitters, I had my babies. And so now I needed help with my kids. And so they were stuck, right? And so we did not allow them to go back home, to their house. And so the house has been empty for years. And now since Alexa is actually in school and she starts pre-K3 in September, not that we don't need our parents, but we don't need them to kind of help with our kids anymore. And they were just exhausted. They're older, and I guess they got tired of taking care of children. So they ended up moving back home. And so they left on Monday. And it's been tough. We're an extremely close family. And not having them here 10 minutes away from me, it's a little sad. But, we'll get through it. We have FaceTime. I'll be actually going to visit them towards the end of the year because we're planning to take the kids to Disney World. So it kind of gives us something to look forward to. And I think also, to my understanding, they're supposed to be flying back in September to surprise my nephew for his birthday. So, they won't be gone for too long. It's almost like they're on vacation and then they'll be kind of coming back. But yeah, so I guess enough of that. What I wanted to talk to you guys about on this week's podcast was how we evolve past our old selves and what that process is like, right? Like shedding old skin and kind of becoming new versions of ourselves. When that happens, you don't really realize that that's happening, right? Because change is a very gradual process. So on a day-to-day basis, you don't really see the change. It's only, years later in hindsight, when you kind of think about, where you were versus where you are, that's when you're like, wow, I've changed so much. And the reason that I wanted to kind of talk about this was because this past weekend, my aunt celebrated her birthday, and so all of the girls, along with our husbands, our spouses, we kind of got together and we all went out, to celebrate her. And so one of my friends, as we're kind of in a circle, kind of talking and reminiscing about old times and how we all met and the crazy things that we used to do, when we were back in our 20s. She was sharing specific stories about me. And as she's, sharing, I'm standing there and I'm listening to her, and I was like, wow, I really used to be that person. And by that person, I guess I've always been very tough, no nonsense, very loud mouth, very low tolerance for disrespect from anyone. So, for example, we could be out in a club, and this was the examples that she was using. And she was saying, Nancy was always like, the bulldog, the protector. And like 1 minute, she could be happy-go-lucky and she could be with someone who she was really feeling and she really liked. And he can go and do something, the smallest thing that she didn't like. And I would be like, bark his head off, and I would use curses and profanity, basically curse them out and be like, you know what, I'm done with you, and kind of keep it moving. And so I was very kind of self-centered in a way, no nonsense. And I just had very low tolerance, like, for people. And so for me, if people didn't act the way that I wanted them to act, I would cut them off with the quickness. And so I was not who I am today. I tried to be a lot more understanding, a lot less judgmental, not so rough around the edges. And so it kind of got me to thinking about, how do we evolve past our old selves, and what are the steps that we take, either consciously or subconsciously, to become better people. And for me, I don't necessarily remember or know when that happened, but I am such a different person than who I was, 15, 20 years ago. And I think I've evolved for the better. But in that evolution of myself, I've had to shed a lot of old things, right? Being personal views, being certain attitudes, behaviors, relationships, all of these things that make up who we are, right? Our belief system, the things that we choose to invest our time in, even the perception that we have of ourselves, and one of the things that I remember really clearly when I was younger is that I always felt like I had to help people, or I felt like I always had to fix people. And so what I've realized now is that my friendships back then, and a lot of the people that were attracted to me or that I was attracted to, were people who I perceived needed fixing. And what I mean by that was either they, came from broken homes, they were in dysfunctional relationships, they didn't really have a strong family or support system. And so I felt like I needed to take these people in. Me and my sister both, we were always these kinds of nurturers in a sense. And what I started realizing is that the reason I was attracted to these people is because I myself was broken. And so even in my own mind, right back then, I thought I had my life together. I thought that my life was better than theirs because I came from a 2-family household, because my parents always strived, to give my sister and I the better things. Like, we never really had, whatever we wanted, for the most part, we got. Even though we lived in an urban area, even though we lived in an underserved community, we were the ones who always had. And so for me, I interpreted that, I internalized that as almost being better than. And, it's taken a lot for me to realize that and to even speak on it. But this has been a part of my own evolution and my own growth and my understanding of myself, of who I was then to who I am now. And because I was attracting these kind of people to me, when I started to shift, when I started to evolve, when I started to heal myself and those parts of me that were broken, those same relationships began to suffer. And so the friends that I had could not accept the person that I was becoming. And even with that, for a long time, I was still very judgmental. And this is something that I've recently come to terms with, because I never saw myself as someone who judged people. My sister has always been the quote unquote judger, and that's what we always, would say to her. But in hindsight, I realized that I too was placing my own judgments on people when their lives or when their decisions or their choices didn't reflect choices that I would have made or decisions that I felt they should have been making. And that part of me, that judger part of me, affected some of the closest relationships that I had. I lost a really important relationship, a friend that I had over 20 years of friendship, because they felt that they were always being judged by me. And of course, my automatic response to that was to become defensive, because, right, we never want to be called out on our shit. And then, for me, I've always been pretty good at stepping back and really looking at myself. But when it came to that, I didn't, and I would admit that I refused to accept, what this person had been saying. And this is almost like a revelation to me, because when the friendship and the relationship dissolved, at first I was angry, right? It's almost like the 5 stages of grief, right? Like anger, hurt, acceptance, and whatever the other stages are. But I was going through that because what it was I was mourning the death of a very important relationship. And in the same way that we mourn the end of romantic relationships, right, with people that we love or that we're in love with, when it's a friend, I think that it's even deeper, because it's a different type of relationship, and you don't tend to think that your friendships are going to end, especially when it's been over more than 20 years and you've been a part of each other's lives for some of the biggest, most important life-changing events, children, marriage, death of loved ones, heartbreak, all of these things that you go through with your friends. So when the relationship ended, I was angry and I was hurt. And then I was like, I was blaming. But now when I step back and look at it and I realize my own fault and the fact that I had been judging all of those years, it's like, wow, I'm just sorry, that I had put these expectations on someone when really all I was supposed to be was their friend, and listen and show support and try to help as best as I could. And there was a significant time in the relationship that I was not doing that. And as a result of that, that kind of contributed to the demise of the relationship. But now with that realization, I can accept my part in that. I take accountability and responsibility for it. But I can also now let go of the anger and the hurt and all of these emotions that were attached to that relationship ending. And I can sit here now and really say, I wish this person well. I still have an immense love in my heart for them. And at the end of the day, I just want them to find peace and happiness in their life, and say that and really mean it. But kind of going back to the whole point of this about us evolving from who we were to who we are, it's a process. right? Because we're constantly changing. Even physically, like our bodies, like the cells in our bodies, they're either, they're multiplying and they're regenerating. And, the person that we were a week ago, we're not that same person, right? We lose hair, we gain weight, our bodies start to physically change. And this is all a natural process of just growing. And I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm searching for the bigger purpose or the bigger meaning in my life, and what I'm supposed to be sharing, the gift that I'm supposed to be sharing with the world. And, a part of that is sharing my story, sharing my testimony, sharing some of the things that have broken me in the past, and how I've using, that's not even a word, how I've used being broken to heal myself, and as of recently, I have had this crazy tugging or pulling, towards God. And I was reading something earlier today that said, brokenness precedes breakthrough, right? And so when you think about all of those times where you were the most destroyed, where you were broken, that really was like the catalyst to your healing, right? To your breakthrough. Because when you're at the very bottom, when you're at your lowest of the low, when you can't go any further, that is when, you hit rock bottom, and the only way for you to go is up. And that's really what God wants for us, right? He has to break us in order to heal us. Because a lot of times what happens is we don't turn to God until we have nothing else to turn to, right? So we have to be in that place of brokenness to turn to God and say, okay, God, I release my selfish desire to try to control this situation, to make this work out in my favor. And I relinquish this control to you. And I trust you, to help me, to heal me, to make me whole. And so for this week, I want you to start thinking about your own evolution. How you have changed from 5 years ago. Where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 10 years ago? And where are you today? What facilitated that change? And what do you want your future to look like 5 years from now? What are the things that are tugging at your heart or nudging at your soul, kind of, whispering in your ear to move forward? Because we all have something, but a lot of times we try to ignore that voice, but that voice is God speaking to us, and we're all here for a purpose. We're not going to get through this life unscathed or unscarred, right? So if we really want to live our best lives, we have to give up almost the identity that we have established for ourselves, or this idea of who we are or who we should be, and really submit ourselves to the life and the destiny that God has planned for us, right? And it's like I was saying, we never know that God is all we need until He's all we have, right? So when we're at our lowest and there's nothing else, and we don't know how to get ourselves out of the hole that we've dug ourselves in, that's when we call to God, right? And we want Him to help us, and we want Him to come into our lives and to work miracles. And I know that there's someone now, listening to this, who might be doubting what I'm saying, right? Because you're probably not ready yet. And so you're really probably super self-absorbed or super self-reliant, and you're not ready to acknowledge the power of God. Because up until this point, maybe you haven't suffered. Maybe you haven't lost anything. Maybe you haven't been broken yet. Because sometimes, God tries to break us in small, gentle ways. But it's not until he really breaks us and we're lost that's when we look to him. And that's when, we're willing to try anything. Because at that point, what do we have to lose, right? We don't have anything else. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to say is, as we evolve, in order for us to find ourselves and to become who we're supposed to be, we have to lose ourselves. We have to shed, that old skin. We have to let go of our old selves. We have to let go of our pride. We have to lose the identity that we've built for ourselves all our lives. And for me, that was always feeling like I had to be the tough one. And I was super stank and I was not a girl's girl at all. I was not about female empowerment. Like, I didn't trust women. I very rarely, allowed new women into my circle. I just thought they were shady. I had past experiences with women that were not favorable. And so I had built this identity and this persona that said, I don't need women in my life. Women are untrustworthy. They're shady, they're catty, they're petty. I prefer to hang out with dudes because you don't deal with the same nonsense that you do with women. And for a long time, my closest friends had been males. And then you have to kind of ask yourself, well, what is that about? And why was I attracting all of these dysfunctional, untrustworthy women? And that's because I was that person. But I didn't realize that because I was too self-absorbed in my own shit that I was putting the blame on everyone else. And it wasn't until I started looking within and doing my own self-work and doing my own self-healing that identity I let go of that identity, and it started breaking down, and I no longer wanted to be that woman. And so I started doing things to facilitate my growth, not only as a woman, but as a human, as a person. And I wanted to be, a representative of God's grace and God's love. And so if I wanted to do that, I could not live in my old ways and in my old behaviors and in the old patterns of thinking. I had to be able to lose myself in order to find myself. So I guess that's what I'm going to leave you guys with, this week. I want you to think about a time that you felt that you were broken and you were rebuilt by God, and what that process was like for you. And also, as we continue on our journey of evolution and growth, where is God currently asking you to let go? This is a question that I asked myself today. And again, this is the realization about where the judgment came in. And so that was my response. Like, I prayed to God to help me to release judgment of other people when their lives or their choices or their decisions do not reflect my ideas or the choices or decisions that I feel like they should make. I want to let go of judgment. I want to be able to just truly love and accept people for who they are, as they are, and let God judge. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I hope you all have an amazing week. Make sure to love yourself and each other. And as always, go out there and crush those goals.